Okay, this is a part two for the new African American proton. So in the last video we set up, but we just did a lot of sort of setup of thinking about what we're talking about here. And so in this one, we're going to get to the structure of what this new cerebellum, our greater cerebellum, would be. So I call it the African American Trail. And the idea here is a big, long trail, sort of like a digestive system that will start somewhere around in New England, somewhere maybe just outside of New York City or something like that, and then wind its way through 460 10-mile segments, each segment locked in with the next segment, winding its way around, eventually heading out somewhere on the western coast, maybe somewhere south of Los Angeles, between Los Angeles and San Diego or something like that. It will be made up of these individual segments. And the whole idea of the cerebellum is that it needs to be able to lock in with our greater body in a way that the cerebral cortex can't. And so if you look here at each of these individual segments, each one is going to have a right side and a left side, and then a top and bottom. But as it winds around, sometimes they could be upside down. So you could have, if you look at the diagram here, as the red being the top and the blue being the bottom, there's times that, it'll have wound around in such a way that the blue is on top and the red is on the bottom, and right is left and left is right. But you'll know along the trail, you could, picture as if the whole thing was one straight line. And so each 10-mile segment, you can say something like, right is right leg or right foot, or left leg or left foot, or something like that. So it doesn't really matter where you are winding around. Your section could be completely vertical, relative to the geography of the spherical Earth. The long-term setup of this cerebellical concept is going to be something to map in with our body, and we'll probably begin by mapping it in with things out in space. I said in an earlier video, talked about Mars, since it's so far away, that we would probably start a concept around the equator of Mars. And so like this cerebellum could lock in with some sort of stuff as a communication place with this road on Mars, or and then as we build Mars, going to the north from there and going to the south, there will just be a lot of ways that this will give us a basic kind of structural system that is primed for locking in the computers, our own human thinking process and everything will just have more of an ability to lock this whole thing in. It'll be a brain system, but you can say, okay, section number 375 is going to move the left little finger or something. Whoop, that was my right. Move the left little finger, and then you choose areas within this segment that are moving, which part of the finger or something like that. I mean, it will give us this kind of ability to lock in with a body system and know what points are attached to what points. The computers will know how to model all of that and set it up through whatever the AI processes are of building our greater life. So let me just say a word here that, like, I've worked on this stuff for a long time. The cerebellum is going to tie in with the continent of Africa as a second level brain concept. The continent of Africa is going to tie in with the planet Uranus and all the moons and all that stuff. So Black people are going to have a leadership center here in America. If you like this model, going to have a leadership center here in America with this African American Trail. And then in Africa, what we're going to build in Africa is what I call the African Road. And it will be one continuous road that winds around for maybe 30,000 miles or something, touching on every single country in Africa that wants to participate. And the way that's going to work is the outside world, countries from around the outside world will sponsor or be tied in with these will be larger segments. They might be 30 miles long and 2 miles wide or something as we build the African Road. But the dynamics are sort of different. It's black people outside the road and then people from all countries coming in and sponsoring these segments and having a tie-in with Africa through this long road that winds all the way through Africa. And that gets into a lot of complex stuff about how all that would work. And, if America was to sponsor 10 segments, are they 10 segments in a row, so 300 miles in a row? Or would there be one in Egypt, one in South Africa, one in Kenya, one in Mozambique or something? And are they spread out all over the place? But the idea is sort of, I think, there was a movie with Nicolas Cage called Lord of War. And in this movie, if you think of Africa as sort of like a natural digestive system, in this movie, he flies in a plane and just lands it somewhere there in Africa. And then it kind of goes into a fast-paced thing. And first, a bunch of people come in and they steal every single thing out of the plane. Then they come and they steal all of the siding off of the plane. They take the engines. They take, I think, the wheels. It shows, overnight, sort of a fast action camera. In the morning, there's just nothing but the dead skeleton of what was a flying plane the night before. And I think there's a concept so I think the African American Trail is sort of cerebellum first, but beginning to partly tie in as a leadership center with Africa. The African Road is sort of like it may be our actual cerebellum, but it's at a second level, it's sort of a digestive system. To the first level brain, it is the first level digestive system. Then at the second level, it's kind of both a cerebellum and a digestive system, which is somehow going to be the things that are necessary to end up tying in with our whole actual greater body system. But I think the third then solar element of this is the whole Uranus system, which is the end of the digestive system, and it's going to have moons and it's got ice rings and all sorts of stuff going on out there, way out at the end of the solar system, where we're going to pump a whole lot of energy. We talked about that in one of the recent videos. So 3 big things here for Black people. Now, this is how I've seen that this is supposed to set up. But let's say, for example, Black people say, yes, we want something, we want our own show, but we don't want this trail concept. What we want is something like, let's say we took the states Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and we were to say, okay, these are going to go to Black people. They become 3 Black states. If we do something like that, that doesn't fit any model of mine. How do you say this? If Black people sort of absorb, the idea is to build a structure that's sort of like a digestive system. It's the cerebellum at the first level, but the concept is that it will do the absorbing. It becomes something that wants to absorb. And with Black people now having all this structure built in that's designed to fit who and what you are, the color, the dynamics you've been through, yourself as super cerebellicals, we talked about in the last video, that kind of stuff. They should be the right deal, and it would be something that, but I mean, picture a person. Why does a human being get hungry? Well, what if their digestive system has a lot of Black energies that are saying, we want to absorb food. We want to absorb food. Your bone structure is white. It may be all about this structure, a lot of legal and judicial structure or something. The digestive system is saying we want to absorb food, and it pulls you towards food. So you go and eat food. If we had no black people, we might create a greater living being that didn't want to eat. He was never hungry. I just want to be clear that this is how I understand this cerebellum concept. You could do something like those 3 states, but it wouldn't get paid anything extra. It would not. There's no thing where you take 3 states and start to get a whole bunch of extra money poured into you. I mean, you look at places like Haiti. I think pure black energies need a source of energy coming into them or something. This is designed to be fed an ongoing source of money and structure and everything. It's spread all throughout America, and yet it gives black people their own kind of conceptual area. So, okay, let's start talking about the concept a little bit itself. First, the reason there's 460 sections, haven't gotten to this yet in other things, but America has 50 proton states, but there's going to be a conceptual thing where, remember that we're building a whole greater solar life that we need to be able to carry out to other solar systems around the whole Milky Way galaxy. And that means we need to build this genetic structure of the number 23, 2 sets of 23, into just about everything we do. And so America's going to wind up having 46 neutron states. There'll still be 50 proton states. We're going to tack some states together for the X chromosome and the Y chromosome as something to cause them to work at more complicated, slower, deeper levels. But so America's going to end up having a neutron concept of 2 sets of 23. But so we're going to be doing this all over the place. We're going to be setting things up into things that can pair off into 2 sets of 23. And so with 460 sections, you can set them up as 230 maternal sections and 230 paternal sections. And the rules basically are no black people anywhere in America have to move to the new African American Trail. But for those who want to, there'll be incentives and, the whole idea of setting up your own proton and voting and legislative and judicial and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it'll be very exciting. We'll have a lot of funding. We have to build this trail with a whole lot of big, heavy structure. I mean, I believe the thing over the coming centuries is going to become almost like, however many miles that is that 4,600 miles winding around America of almost like a giant city, just a giant 4,600 mile city. So it's going to have a ton of fresh water, transportation, and the whole thing is only a mile or so wide. It's a massive, going to be a huge, gigantic structural concept to start to build. But water, power, energy, sewage are things that are going to have to be built into this thing at massively large industrial levels. There's also things you're going to have to think about, like if you're building this trail to be an athletic concept, then one of the things you might want to do is be able to host the Olympics at some point. It'd be pretty easy to host the Summer Olympics, but what about the Winter Olympics? So where do you want this trail to go? I think it's going to start somewhere around New York, and I think somewhere it's going to pick up kind of along the old Route 66, somewhere west of Chicago, and begin to head out west. But do you want to take it up through some mountain region that has a lot of snow so that you could host Winter Olympics and just have your own ski area and stuff like that? I mean, there could be an area where you want to have the little extra space and do some farming kind of stuff. And you may have to make choices as far as, and white people are going to get, you're going through a lot of rural white America. And so we're going to have to do this whole thing together. It's going to be a process of figuring out where this whole thing goes. So the idea is no black people have to move to it. And some white people are going to want to go and get involved, but they're going to have to understand, just as a lot of in outside America, a lot of the top political positions stuff are going to be white. Along the trail, a lot of the top leadership stuff is going to be black. And so you'd be, but everybody's built differently. And let's say a black person has a good job and doesn't move to the trail, but they start to really follow it and they're really politically interested in it. So that person may want to become a primary black voter, voting for things happening along the trail, but then he gets a vote on white stuff, but it's like, white people may agree that black people should get to have a say in things, but they don't want black people to control it. And black people may say, okay, with white people being 60% of America, they don't want that to overwhelm their stuff where white people can control the black voting. But some say would make sense so that there is so we're going to have to work a lot of that kind of stuff out. Think about this. In you know how there's this idea that when a society has a lot of very poor people and a lot of very rich people and no middle class, how that's kind of a problem. Well, think about in athletics here in America right now. There is an extremely rich class of athletes. People will make, $500 million or more during their athletic career. People are getting huge athletic salaries and becoming very wealthy as professional athletes. And then all the other athletes are absolutely dead broke. Part of the idea here with the trail is to build a new middle class of athletes, which, for black people, imagine an idea like this trail may have a whole lot of hotels or motels, and it's built to have a flow, to have a constant flow from the east heading along the trail out to the west. And so imagine something like high school kids will go and spend their summers, traveling and playing in basketball tournaments or something. And this whole trail can have a lot of athletic stuff going on where black people and white people, whoever, but if super cerebellicals would, have maybe a greater portion of your population being interested in just doing a lot of athletic stuff. So we're going to get flows of money coming into the trail for just anything that is helping to build athleticism, physicality. But imagine like somebody starts a chain of hotels and they have basketball courts and they just run constant tournaments. And there are a bunch of people this is sort of like middle-class basketball players where I don't know if you'd have teams or if you go and you shoot for teams and you just sort of are getting pickup type tournaments or, how organized is it going to be or something. But it's an idea of just whatever kind of sports. I mean, you're going to have very limited amount of room, but do you want to build a bunch of golf courses? You could build 4,600 miles of golf courses. You could have a lot of more sports for seniors, shuffleboard, or devising, coming up with new kinds of things. Disc golf is a great game. But I think also another thing for the African American Trail could be we talked in an earlier video about how America's like 70% obese right now. When you go through a kind of birth phase into a new phase, you often lose all that weight. You change a lot of your corporate stuff and empower human beings who are going to try to think humans first instead of corporate people, corporate financial stuff first and everything. And one of the ways to do this is going to be to have a lot of really healthy rehabilitation type stuff. And that could be a new industry along the trail is people from anywhere around the world, black people, white people, go to, imagine you have a guy who served in the military. He was a sergeant. And so now he starts a rehab and he's kind of going to be the tough guy who then brings in nutritionists and all kinds of other stuff. And you're just getting people who, sign up to come and trying to lose weight, trying to get healthier, trying to quit eating sugar, trying to change their computer habits, any kind of different thing of just, I think we're going to be going into a time as we become aware that every human being has an inner civilization. We want to upgrade our inner civilizations. And this can be the African American Trail can play a big role in that. There's another kind of conceptual thing like this with the trail. Okay, let's say black people are very strong in these physical areas, but a weaker point is the cerebral cortex areas. So you can, with this whole entire trail, you can say, okay, what we want to do with the trail is use the 460 segments to start to build our cerebral energies, even though it's a cerebellum and it's going to take on responsibilities and make a lot of money for a lot of cerebellical stuff. And so let's say one segment somewhere is doing something educationally or with arts and crafts or with weight loss and health or with fighting addictions or with any kind of concept of life. You have all these segments, and when one segment does something which is working really well, it becomes kind of well known for something it's doing really well, that could flash out all across all 460 of these segments. I mean, probably not everyone, but maybe half of them or something will say, ooh, we like that. We're going to try that and see if that works for us too. And so by having a really competitive nature, not so much competing against white people, but more as though you have an idea that every other greater living being we ever meet, they're going to have an African American trail inside themselves. And you want to build your African American trail to make the whole human race, to make the black population in America and in our world, and with your leadership, as you start getting more involved with leadership stuff in Africa, you just want to be super competitive, add to the competitive of the whole human race. You're competing with white people and Asians and Indians and everybody else. Everybody's competing to make our whole system healthier. Some of the other stuff, I think, as you imagine you've got these long segment, and imagine one of the things you do is you build a cool big train system that runs along the whole thing. And so now you start having you with high schools or colleges or pro sports, but you can also think of celebrities. Imagine that, like, let's say you get some train tracks and you get something like you have almost like maybe 8 or 10 train tracks, and then you maybe even build 2 or 3 layers or something, or you build it so that you can add layers in the future. By the way this thing is set up, imagine a rich celebrity, Oprah Winfrey or somebody, can buy herself her own train. And so you have a concept of, like for a black rap musician or something, or a sports team, just they set up the schedule so that they're sort of traveling along this trail, and every athlete gets their own train car. So it's sort of like you can live your life kind of traveling around. I think there may be something where in California you have ferry boats that take you down through the Panama Canal and back. I mean, some transportation will go both ways, but there's definitely supposed to be this sort of moving thing. And so anybody who's coming like to play sports or to just travel along the trail, or this may be a popular area for people. You know how more and more people are working on computers and they don't have to be at work anymore. So people may live along the trail and just travel in it. It's going to be, the whole thing is going to be designed for a lot of travel and movement. And if you do something like you set it up so that, let's say, each person is allowed to have a big sea chest, and all the hotels and motels, they move your sea chest. So you have reservations going along. And so every day you just basically close up your sea chest and you go out and travel, maybe just with a computer in your backpack, or you're on your bike or something, and travel. And then 10 miles or 20 miles down the road, you get to your hotel room and there's your sea chest. It's there waiting for you. To do things like that well, that's the kind of thing, if you went to China or something, they would figure this out and they would make it 100%, and it would be beautiful, and it would make the whole system really, really work really well. If the sea chest isn't there, if it's been broken into, if it's been robbed, if it just didn't get there and the system doesn't work, that's who's going to come to travel when you can't have your sea chest. I think you also want to think about things like, if you travel along the Mississippi River for 50 or 100 miles or something, that could be a place for really wealthy Black people. Or if you have a place where you keep part of the trail down on the ground, and that's where a lot of the travel stuff, but then some of it goes up on the hillside, and those can have, roads for nicer houses. It's all usually higher up you are, the sort of nicer or something. But there'll be a lot of things to think about. But I would come back to, my final words here would be to heterosexual Black men and thinking about this default process. And a lot of the default process has focused on us white men. It's sort of, the Biden and all this stuff, Black people with Obama sort of started the whole default. And I think a lot of the Black people have been on the side of the Democrats, and sort of got locked in with the gay lesbian groups, but all sort of attacking us white men that have been sort of at the core of this whole default. But really, you Black men, you need to really, really, as you start to think about setting up this new African American trail, your group needs to really talk and think about the concept of default, because your Black women are very, very strong and maternal. If you set up this trail and in almost no time at all, Black women are running the whole trail, and what's your choice as a Black man? You can go out and live in white America, or you're living under, and when do you grow up and become men? I was thinking about, this is almost funny, but think about the movie Black Panther. So this was a big deal for, I think, the Black community. It was this great Marvel movie during the peak of the Marvel stuff. You have this great actor who passed away, which is too bad, but he was really cool. And you have this Black Panther movie, and it has this concept of Wakanda, which is like a secret Black area, which is a really beautiful concept of a great Black area. And it has a king, a Black king. And in that movie, somebody from outside comes in, tries to kill the guy, the whole fight, everything. But my point is, that's every movie needs to have a plot of some sort. But so you could talk about the plot of that movie. I think there's some deep stuff in these two movies I'm talking about. But my point here is the second Black Panther movie, it had a queen instead of a king. She has a daughter, the princess, who's a big main character in the whole thing. And then all the warriors are bald Black women, no men there. And then they need some kind of outside super genius. And should they get a Black man to play that role? No, they don't have enough Black women in the movie yet. let's give this role to some teenage black woman in America who's going to become the super genius to come in and help sort of save Wakanda. I don't think there was a black guy in the movie. My point is, here in America, women default men. We white men have held on for 250 years of white and Obama, one black, but of male presidents. Obama tried to hand it off to Hillary Clinton, but in spite of that, we've held on 250 years, 47 presidents, if you include William Henry Harrison. We haven't broken yet. If you black men go out to start this trail, I think a lot of people could see, the thing defaulting within a generation or two, a presidential generation or two, being completely taken away from you by black women. Now, I think for black women, the thing is, if black men, I talked in the last thing about how you have, father and son energies, and black son energies are way too strong, kind of criminal and stuff, and black father energies, which are, go to work, get up every day, stay married and locked in with black women, raising children. Strong, good, heterosexual black men's energies locking into this trail. And I would almost say have a, how the Jewish people have a whole bunch of different holidays that all each sort of have a point in helping to keep their culture, say, strong. I would say you should have a Black Panther holiday where you watch the 2 Black Panther movies and all heterosexual black men. There's not the whole first movie is a black Wakanda. That's like a black Y chromosome. It's like something for black men. And by the second movie, black women had just taken every single thing away from you black men. And you got to be aware of that. But I think for the stronger black men move more towards father energies, the more black women are going to be happy with it. When the women don't default to men, the women move towards from mother energies that want to dominate and control the men into wife energies. They want to be loved and in relationships and have, wife energies need a man to love them. So they have to work for it. They have to try to be loved by men. Mother energies don't. They just want to dominate. And, in a sense, I'm not saying anything bad about mothers here. I'm just thinking of these in different energy terms. But so if you have these sections, you have to do a lot of thinking work here. If you say, okay, like some sections are going to be just for heterosexual black men, father energies or something, or do you take a section and say, okay, maybe if it's a 10-mile section, 1 mile is completely controlled by the men. On the furthest side, 1 mile is just by the women, and then there are gradient sections in between. But do you want to set up, how much do you want your magnetism to get, where men and women are directly sort of opposed to each other? How much do you want it? There's going to be a lot of stuff for you to think about and talk about through the early years of setting this thing up. So it's going to naturally get a lot of these cerebellical energies. And that's where jobs and money and structure for a lot of the thing will come from. But you've got to do a lot of thinking about, how do you make this a Wakanda where black women are happy and have their sections or their areas and where they've got plenty of going on and they've got leadership and they've got stuff that's making them happy, but where it's not just devouring black men into these little sort of little boy energies or something, the son energies, and killing out the black father energies. Lots to work on, very exciting. So these are just some thoughts on what I all these years of study, what I've come up with, and there's certainly a lot more to say about Africa and other stuff, but this is sort of a start for a new proton concept that will stretch around throughout America here. So thank you very much.